early game and the decision-making faltering into the mid to late game. But eventually, it took them 5 minutes of a break between the games, and all of a sudden, the decision-making was there in the mid to late game. And on top of that, I feel like H2K have a clear understanding of the draft, but the exception of not playing Rise, I still think it's pretty solid.
Yeah, okay. What about you, Dexter? How did you view their game?
Yeah, I think overall, if you think about it, Forgiven had like his little like accidents, I think, where it kind of cost him the game, I think, in game one. But overall, H2K looks like really solid, and of course, like pure mechanical raw talent. This is like a really stacked roster, and the decision making after like such sort of practice is like already there, and they're up against a team where I mean, they beat SKT, of course, and qualified that way. So they have to see. I'm really excited to see how game one works actually, and what teams want to do in the drafting. Of course, we've been emphasizing that drafting is like really important on this patch. And maybe Eva has something that we haven't seen yet this tournament.
Right on. Overall for us, Kieran, I mean, so far, we've had certain games where we're sitting here at the desk and we're like, okay, we're either confused or disappointed about the draft so far from these teams. How would you say, you know, H2K's draft looked, or even just overall, are you disappointed or pleased so far with the drafting of the teams so far here at IEM?
I mean, I think Papa Smithy said it best when he kind of really underlined this idea that we're really getting to see what teams are prioritizing, and it's changing drastically from game to game, from team to team. And he said, you know, we kind of get to play Mythbusters a bit for the new patch coming in. And I think it's kind of indicative of what these teams are prioritizing, what they feel comfortable on. All
right, yeah. So we'll see, of course. Earlier we saw QG making a lot of big changes coming into day 2. But before we move on, let's take a look at exactly what H2K made happen in their victory 2-1 yesterday.
H2K and Cloud9 loaded on up. If H2K take this one early on, I feel like that kind of sends the signal that, hey, these stars are going to beat the Brainiacs of Cloud9. Back pocket as the knockup and the pillar comes in. Balls is going to be first blooded. And High goes in with a flash and the knockup looking for Jankos. Ryu is gonna go down here. Sneaky will be able to pick him off at the backside. Gets Jankos as well. Double kill. Staying alive completely. Sneaky just kiting backwards from Otawamne. Balls could be in trouble, but it's 4-on-1. A triple kill to the Lucian. We are getting ready to kick off game number 2 of what has already been a very, very close and explosive series. But in comes Ryu, still can't find Sneaky. Exhaust is on Rush. Ryu goes down, Sneaky picks the kill, and Jankos is knocked and battered and bruised and taken out. Forgiven doesn't have any more escapes, and neither does Jankos. Down he goes, a double kill for Rush. Can he get the triple? It's Balls that secures it in the end. Jankos goes in, looks for Rush, takes down the kitty cat. Jankos will fall, but so will Sneaky, and now it's going to be Cloud9 melting away. Third game on the line here. It has been a battle of wits and a battle across the lanes. He's knocked away, but he's got a wild growth on him. High will melt, and so will Jensen. Now it's going to be big trouble for Cloud9. They've lost 2 members, and an inhibitor's going down with the Baron buff pushing in. This could be the end of the game here, Papa Smithy.
And you saw just the joy that H2K had in their victory, of course. For one, coming back, beating a brand like C9, but 2, winning kind of on their own terms and proving the fact that, yeah, you know what, we got these new superstars. It's a different H2K, but it's still one that has that potential to meet that success. We talked about the roster yesterday, and I think, you know, anyone who's followed the scene for a little bit is going to see these names and know that, all right, this team isn't messing around. But what do you think they need to change from day 1 to day 2? Because, again, they had to make that comeback. They had to mount something back.
It's very, very hard to call, because it's like when you think of decision making, you kind of just have to compare it to the enemy team. The question is it going to pair up against the enemy team that they're facing today? That is a big question, because it's like if you compared it to the C9's decision making, it looked very, very solid. But then again, it all depends on the other enemy, because it's like a game of chess. Whoever is winning is going to look super good, but you can't really analyze how good it really is.
Yeah, before we move on to that other team, of course, we just saw briefly Forgiven on there. Yesterday, he didn't really have a shining moment, but is that maybe a good thing, Dexter?
It is, because I think if, especially on SK, Forgiven had probably the weight on him that he has to carry games, and then if he didn't perform up to his level, the team would falter and fall apart. On Gambit, it was kind of the same thing. I think Forgiven played really well on Gambit, but Gambit was like a strong team, even when they finished 8th and went to relegations. I think the team overall was like a spot for the World's contender, so they were actually really strong. And overall, if Forgiven doesn't even need to play to his level to win games, then what is he gonna do next if he actually plays up to that level?
Yeah, that's
if it
true.
makes sense. Like if he's performing like Forgiven level, I want to see how the team does then, because it helps
Right.
a lot in like team fights, in skirmishes, and I want to see Lucian. I want to see Forgiven play Lucian here if he gets it actually.
No, I think that's just pretty much the quintessential H2K riddle right now is they have such a high competitive ceiling that's not just Forgiven, but across that entire, EU super team roster. What do they look like when they are on full power?
Yeah, and Lucian, like you mentioned yesterday, it was very highly prioritized. Taking that away from Forgiven was a big thing for C9, but today maybe it slips through and we get to see what the true power of Forgiven might be here on this team for H2K. But as you were mentioning, Yamato, who's the opponent today? It is going to be that team coming from Korea, EVER, and you may not know too much about them, but let's take a look.
EVER are undoubtedly the dark horse team at IEM Cologne, and this is something that they are particularly used to. EVER have made waves more than once in Korea, the biggest of these being at the 2015 Kesper Cup.
I will do my best for IEM Cologne. Our team can win this event, so we will go to IEM World Championship Katowice.
Even been able to qualify for the LCK, had come from nowhere and made it into the semi-finals of the Kesper Cup.
Now I am very excited. I am looking forward to playing in ESL Studio.
Even world champions SK Telecom T1 fell to them, and not even the inclusion of Faker in Game 2 was enough to stop this rampant EVER team. They may not be well known around the world, but EVER are here to prove themselves in their first international tournament, and their opponents would be wise not to underestimate them.
And there we have it, EVER. Yeah, I mean, Dark Horse really is the best way to describe them, both back in the Kesper Cup and here this weekend at the Intel Extreme Masters. And Frustrating, you had a chance to take a look at them during the Kesper Cup. I mean, tell us, what exactly happened? How were they able to win that whole thing?
So I kind of want to cover two big points with EVER, and the how is their late game shot calling. It's actually really curious. Indicatively, challenger teams typically are really poor with their late game shot calling just because they don't have the experience behind it to, keep themselves together under high pressure situations. But EVER are completely opposite in that they're actually very intelligent, especially with their wording and making the correct calls late, which allows them to beat teams like SKT. But it's not just SKT. Obviously there were conditions to their victory over SKT, but I don't want to take away from EVER's victory at the Kesper Cup. They went through Samsung Galaxy, Anarchy, CJ Entis, and SKT. It's not just one team. They beat 4 LCK teams, and Anarchy looked better than they ever have.
Yeah, I think that's really the big point, is because if you only think about beating SKT, then people are going to think back and think, well, SKT also lost to Samsung Blue when they came back after the victory the last time at Worlds, and then this year maybe they're also on vacation mode. But right now, you can't make that excuse for the other teams, because the other teams they did kind of have to fight for they had a lot working towards them, because this was a tournament kind of built for them, for the teams that didn't get to go to Worlds, and the other teams also couldn't take down EVER. Do you think we're hyping them a little too much, though?
It's like, I think the difficult part about like a team like this, they won a tournament. I think the true test is repeating that same kind of success, simply because they come into that tournament. I don't think a lot of the teams were expecting a lot from them.
Right.
I wouldn't, because if you take a look at the roster, the jungler Ares, he played on Incredible Miracle. He had 1 win out of 16 games, if I remember correctly. And then you have this Key, who took the Key. He just simply took the MVP of the entire tournament on his Bard. So these two players came in and did like a lot of work, but I feel like the true test is today.
Yeah, can they do it again now that other teams are kind of aware of their existence and what might be coming? Before we jump into the game, that we actually have a chance to speak with a member of the EVER team organization over on the main stage with Sean.
Thank you so much, Chobra. I am indeed here, joined by Karamkin. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk to me. Of course, always getting excited here as you're about to get underway. Now, you guys had great success in the Kesper Cup. Does that fill you with confidence going into today's matchup, or is that a little bit of pressure?
일단은 자신감 반
Yeah,
그리고
to
걱정
be
반이
honest,
있고요.
part of it is gaining
대해서는
confidence, but part of it
이제
is also that pressure. I have to admit
부담감을 극복하고
that it comes through, and
좋은
it's on
성적을 내기
us
노력해야 될
to
것
be able
같아요.
to just overcome that pressure and really work on the confidence part.
Now, international competition this soon after the team has been formed, you know, with potentially a ticket to Katowice on the line, does that faze you guys? Is that something you're thinking about?
일단은 굉장히 좋은 기회라고 생각을 하고요. 그리고
Of course, it's a great opportunity.
당연히 카토비체를 갈
And,
목표로
our
열심히
goal is
준비했고요.
to be able to make it to the
아무래도
World
선수들이
Championship in
연습한 잘
Katowice.
해주면은
And if the players
카토비체 갈 수
perform
있지
the way
않을까라고
we
생각합니다.
prepared, I think Katowice is definitely on the horizon.
Now, being here in Cologne, in the ESL studios where the fans are everywhere running around, what's that like for you and the players, feeling that intensity that's here being in part of the IEM Cologne?
일단 저희에게는 굉장히 새로운 기회였고요. 경험이었고요.
And to us,
정말
it's a very new experience for sure.
이런 기회를 준 ESL 측에 정말
And
고맙고요.
we're very thankful that we have this
저희는
opportunity through
경기력으로
ESL.
보답을
And
해드리도록
now I think
하겠습니다.
it's time for us to return that favor by playing really great games.
Well, we hope you do play an absolutely great game because that's what we're all looking for here. So first off, thank you again, Karam Kim, for taking the time to talk to me. And of course, we'll head right back over to you, Chobra Commander. You guys will have lots to discuss.
All right, so the head coach of Ever, Garam Kim, saying that, if they play the way we prepared, we should be able to maybe even get that ticket to Katowice. So, oftentimes when you hear from Dark Horse teams, they're like, oh, well, you know what, sure, we won one tournament, but we're still just taking it one game at a time. But they're coming in saying, if we play our best, Katowice is an option. Winning this tournament is an option.
I mean, look at what teams they beat at the Casper Cup. It would be like stupid almost to not think that they will win this tournament, because probably they have a lot of confidence riding on their back after this Casper Cup. If they've practiced like all the way until this moment, then I think they have like a really good shot at actually doing this.
Yeah, and it would be quite a story, of course, if they're able to repeat that success. One domestically against what most would say are some of the best teams in the world, just because it is from Korea, from that LCK region. But then to perform against these other teams, and an H2K, again, newly formed with superstars. And they performed well against C9. Now that we have a bit of a comparison to put together, how do you think H2K is feeling? I mean, do you think they're worried about anything in particular? Maybe, Kian is barred, of course, probably going to be banned out. But aside from that, aside from the really obvious points, do you think H2K also just wants to play their own game and see how they fare?
And it's like, let's start off at the Bard, because I have like a set opinion about Bard. Because there's two approaches you can have towards a champion that the enemy will almost guarantee pick. You can either find a way to beat it or you ban it, right? And the way to beat Bard, I feel, is the champion called Leona. Because Bard has this kind of tendency about him where he kind of has this lane phase that is very similar to Nami, Sona. He has the sustenance, good poke, and of course his roaming ability is very, very strong. That is what separates Bard from these other two I mentioned. And what is good against these two other champions that I mentioned? Leona. And Vander has shown in the past that he has played Leona, so that is a possibility there.
I mean, do you think it's a big enough possibility that you leave the Bard open, though? Because when players they're good at Bard, they're really good at Bard.
I mean, even if you leave the Bard open, not to take away from Key, because he's a fantastic Bard player, probably the best Bard that we've seen on the competitive stage so far. But I really want to talk and kind of underline Athena, the mid laner forever.
Okay.
This guy, I mean, we've listed the LCK teams that Ever has managed to beat to win the Kespa Cup, but just break down those mid laners. That's Mickey, a fantastic mid laner from the LCK. That's Coco, probably one of the best mid laners in the world. That's Scout, Faker, and now Ryu's kind of the next test. And this guy has already proven that he's gone through the best of the best. And you talk about Key, you talk about Ares, you talk about Crazy. Athena is really good, and I think he's an overlooked threat.
Yeah, I mean, generally, if you've beaten Faker, I don't think you're worried about Ryu at all, but we'll have to wait and find out. Earlier, of course, before we jump right into the picks and bans, we saw that fans actually still gave 32% of their votes over to Ever, a higher vote than QG got earlier in the day, so some confidence in this Korean team coming out. But there we go, the Bard actually being banned out by Ever themselves.
I think it's the easier, like the Leona thing, I think it was like a massive whiff I was going on with, but I think you have this room to put up the target bans on the blue side and on the red side, of course, you also have the room to squeeze in that ban for Bard.
Yeah, so H2K taking out that Bard right away first thing. And
Oh, wow. Well, first, before we even touch on the new champion, just look
Right.
at the bands. Like, we talked about, what was ever going to bring out something more that we kind of expected from the tournament. This looks much more solid and kind of what we expect of just the general OP champions. Lulu's not getting through, Gangplank's respected, Trundle's respected, and then target bans across from H2K.
So yeah, Catherine, of course, the one champion that is blue side banned here, which tells me that H2K maybe wants to go for like a Victor or something, like a safe blind pick mid lane that they don't have to care about anything.
I feel like the trend might be like similar to what they did yesterday was when they blind picked the Anivia, which was the go-to blind pick for Ryu.
Yeah.
He got counted by the Kassadin and they eventually lost that game.
Yeah. Yeah, he did have a very rough game in that first one, but they are just going to pick up the Alistar.
Alistar first pick. I'm not sure if...
Huh.
With Mundo, with Elise, with Kindred, with all these power picks on the board, the fact that, again, we're seeing an Alistar prioritized.
I'm not a big fan of the Alistar first pick because it already locks you into like the support matchup. I mean, sure, Alistar's like a okay choice, but there are like better choices. Of course, Mundo being one of them. We have seen what Mundo can do, that he's actually not being able... You can't kill him. At a certain stage of the game, you cannot kill Mundo anymore. And I would be also Lissandra. Lissandra has been banned in like most of the games we have seen so far, but we actually haven't seen like a really good Lissandra yet. And Lissandra is, of course, there's like the dual flexibility here, which gives Evan, of course, a really good strategic edge right now.
And it's important to note that both Crazy and Athena have shown this champion, so it actually can be flexed between both of them.
Yeah, that's definitely an important note. Now, with the Alistar, does it perhaps by any chance kind of show that maybe they want to toy with the Misfortune now that Trundle is out?
I think, in my opinion, I feel like they should opt in for the Lucian and also go for the jungle pick
Oh, that's
right
true.
here.
Lucian's
Just to hold onto their cards in the solo lanes for as long as possible. Just pick up the Lucian.
Lucian
and
Kindred would be really good here.
Yeah.
I think. Kindred is kind of like, has a really good matchup into Mundo because she's ranged, and the way her stack works, like the ability to stack up things, she does more and more damage more as she stacks it up. Plus, she's like kind of soft counter to like Lissandra because of the AoE and ultimate, and you can just save a target from being bursted down.
I mean, really, the idea is if you have more options to kite Mundo and burn him down, that's the only way to deal with him.
Yeah, you're not going to win face on.
Lucian being locked in, Rek'Sai a bit, I mean, okay. Probably wants a bit more early pressure, maybe focus on like mid lane with like a Blanc or something, what they set up here.
It's not a Nidalee at least.
It's not a Nidalee?
It's like,
that's true.
Nidalee has been picked 9 times in 9 games in this tournament. I just want to buy a Nidalee plushie and burn it to the ground. That's how I feel about it now. But thinking about Rek'Sai as a champion, I feel like he's decent into every matchup. So it's like,
okay,
I'm always okay with Rek'Sai.
It's a safe pick. Yeah,
it's safe because you can always choose your battles with the tremor senses. You can back off, and you're very mobile on the map. That Jankos has proven in the past that he can use of very efficiently.
Look at this, man. It's like, they still flex everything. It's like...
Yeah, I mean, other than Kalista, you kind of still have no idea.
You have no idea what... They can still go into like everything. They can even last pick a Kindred to see if their comp allows it. Shen support being okay. Put them in the jungle, Shen top lane, pick another support. It's...
Holy cow.
Everything is open, man. This is like next level.
And this is a strength of Ever. I mean, the big thing is that they came into the new patch for the Caspa Cup and they showed the best dominance over it. Probably CJ Intis was probably the next team, which of course those were your 2 finalists. But the issue with, the Tigers, KT, Rolster, and SKT is they looked like they were paying 5.16 on 5.18. And it's nice to see that Ever have continued this prep. So it tells me that their support structure actually is fairly strong. They do have a gaming house. Obviously, they lost to Spinu, unable to qualify for LCK, but they got a lot of sponsorship after that. And it looks like it's done work for them because their draft looks great right now.
I mean, this is like...
H2K needs to pick Fiora, I guess. I think they should opt in for the Fiora here because it has a guaranteed good matchup into anything that is sent into top lane. With the Rumble in the picture, if you send the Shen top lane now, it's so easy to pressure the Rumble into the ground.
They can still last pick Renekton technically if Fiora would be locked in, but she isn't. But I'm just saying, it's like so many options for Ever right now that...
But to be fair, it's like Fiora does pretty well into most matchups. There is no like hard counters, but it is a very, very safe blind pick, which this tournament has shown.
I was about to get super excited about the Varus. I personally love Varus showing up, but are we going to see that? The option's still open, but like you guys said, I mean, the point here is that Ever can do whatever they want with this 5th pick and still make something out of it. Like, they could really just random, and they would still be able to make something out of their composition, just given the flexibility in their first 3 picks. Over the other side, Victor also coming out just kind of as a staple return so far in this tournament.
Yeah, I don't think after the game that Ryu had yesterday on Anivia, I don't think he feels too confident on it. Because I think that was his worst performance, and then you compare it to his other two games, which were insane in comparison.
And there we have it. The Varus gets locked in. What do you guys think about Ever and the way they chose their picks then, and then rounding it out with Varus?
This is like one of the most intelligent drafts I've seen.
Yeah.
Like this is probably like the champion selection. If you can see, they don't do the mistake of drafting themselves into a situation where they pick champions for the top lane already. They keep flexing through like the whole draft until like the last pick, and it's like one of the most intelligent drafts that you can do probably on this patch right now.
It's also a very well-balanced composition in terms of where their power spikes are hitting and kind of the tools that they have on it. You have poke, you have hard engage, you have late game scaling, objective control, vision control with Callista sprites, and global ultimates with Shin having that stand united as well as the teleport in the top lane.
Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting first look this weekend for Ever. Can they get the lead against H2K? So far, the picks say they should be able to. We'll find out as we go into game number 1.
Yes, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to IEM Cologne. It is the second semi-final ever going up against H2K. Thank you for joining us yet again. My name is Uber, and I'm here with a man who I've watched for quite some years, even before getting into casting, Papa Smithy. An absolute pleasure to have you with me tonight.
Two Australian casters that have never quite got onto the same casting desk together, casting what is going to be a cracker ever. This instantly, just from picks and bans, have just put together the smartest pick and ban we've seen on the preseason patch so far. And this shouldn't come as a surprise. This is a team that went to the Casper Cup. Okay, some of those big names like the SKT might have been on vacation mode, but Ever was playing patch 521 far superior than to any other team at the tournament. Now coming into patch 523, this is the team that locked in their spot at IEM Cologne first, and just from that first draft, seems like they've been doing plenty of practice so far.
Flex pick central for Ever, and they really managed to maneuver their way through that process well, but now obviously they maneuver through a different challenge. We are onto the Rift, ladies and gentlemen, for game number 1. On the red side, it's going to be Ever, and on the blue, it will be H2K. It'll be interesting to see how they sort of react, because this looks like a little bit of a grouping here for Ever, maybe just Papa for some early vision.
Yeah, level 1s have been predictably fairly defensive this tournament as we're waiting for level 1 strategies to develop. Wow, Ares with the auto attack cancel that's granted by the E actually cancels out the defensive vision. You have to be so quick with your deep vision now that the game starts 15 seconds earlier. So hard to have both defensive and offensive vision. Plenty of offensive vision here. We're seeing the backs though. Be super interesting to see whether a lane self is gotten or if we see standard lanes here.
Well, H2K pinging down towards those wards, so they know Ever have forged forward and dropped some vision there so they can have a bit of early warning about any potential lane swap scenarios. It seems as if they would like to keep things as standard as possible, or at least be able to read into it. So there you go. Forgiven and Vander hugging the wall, still spotted out in that lane swap. You can see instantly on the mini-map, ESC's bot lane are moving towards the top side.
You can see they're looking for the 2v2. That's what they're trying to opt into here. uniquely, Kalista as a champion with the passive is able to dodge Piercing Light from Lucian. Most champions can't deal with the harass coming through there, but can do that. And now Eva's going to have a lot of power on the top side. You can see 5 champions on the top side. Going to be late to have Lissandra hit lane, but they're going to get the 2v2 that whole level 1 was orchestrated to set up.
Exactly, and we'll see them move towards lane and probably won't miss out on too much experience here, though, as Vander already checking to see if anyone was going to be there to greet him, and it is Key and Loken there. Of course, Key of Xenic Storm way back, played in the LSPL for a little bit as well before returning to Korea on that Shen support. And Crazy as well makes his way down bottom.
Xenic Storm's one of those names you just have to whisper to long-term Korean viewers, and they all think about what could have been. So many great players, like the likes of Peekaboo, have passed through the Xenic Storm organization. They never fielded that 5-man lineup that could have been, but they put together some great players, and as you mentioned, another one on the Rift here.
Yeah, many distinguished players actually coming out of that lineup. And of course, Key looking to make himself one of those now. It's already been a back and forth in the mid lane, and Athena finding he's losing out on that trait there as Ryu doesn't seem to be afraid to deal with this sort of mid-Varus coming out from Athena. It was that last pick as well. And I know Papa, I guess, maybe trying to put some pressure onto that Victor. We saw the picks from H2K, though. They all had to be pretty safe with so many flexes coming in.
The safety is going to be identified here. Waiting to see if Jankos will go for a turret dive. Thinking about it.
He's looking a little bit low here as well. Completely none the wiser to Jankos, just sitting off here to the side, and Ryu just maybe hoping Athena just gets a little bit more forward, gets a little bit more cocky, but Jankos is going to go in anyway. The Praise Seeker, the Flash, the Unburrow, it's all there, and one more order will get it done. First blood to Ryu.
Really nice, assertive move from Jankos. You could see, the reason why Athena opted into those early trades is that he's gone for regen from level 1. He went for that corrupting potion, tried to take advantage of it by getting those early trades and then healing through. Of course, did not factor in the creative pathing you can do. Jankos showed it. They got the kill. Good smart flash for the auto attack from Ryu. And now on the back foot already. Both summoners down for the Varus.
So H2K showing sufficient disdain for the picks from Ever, especially that Varus in mid, and Loken as well fancies a little bit of damage coming forward, as well as Key just flanks up on that side. So hard to always get that damage to stick towards this bottom lane combo here. And this is one of the few games that, well, in fact, the first, this weekend that Forgiven's actually not played Tristana.
Exactly, he's been on Tristana Jude's definitely been prioritizing structure killing. You know, every series we've had so far, this is the 4th series of IEM Cologne, has kind of had a different theme, and the theme for the H2K Cloud9 series was prioritizing structures over KDA, over anything else for Forgiven, you know, showing more of a Gambit playstyle than, of course, his heyday in SK, where he was the true high KDA, hyper carry, 80 carry, and in general, Ever's kind of showing us why lane swaps have kind of been a head scratcher, just because they invested so much in getting that early aggressive vision. 2 of their members got to lane late. They lost out on experience in both top and bottom lane, and now they've been preyed upon in mid, so theoretically, 4 out of 5 of their champions off the bat 5 minutes in, okay, maybe only by inches, are behind.
To see just how far behind it is, or how that translates as we move through into what is a much early game, mid-game, should I say, now as we do continue through. I mean, looking across the board here, no notable CS differences, really, with the exception, I guess, of Ryu, with just that time he spent alone in lane to get slightly ahead of Athena.
Yeah, we won't talk too much about 4 or 5 CS. In the mid-game, okay, let's wait for some item completion. Getting ahead of yourself, Uber, let's just calm down. There's
Standard
been some
for me,
action.
bro. Standard for me. It has been said that Oduamne, you know, he's been one of those guys that has still definitely preferred to go for that Rumble here as well, hoping a safer pick in this lane will give him an easier passage. But look at this, Ring of Frost coming out as well. He flashes the Cleaver. He may not be able to get away yet, though, of course. The slow going to be coming into effect, and there's the Cleaver hitting. Oduamne just struggling to get away from this one. He does able to pop the junk shield, moving forward. Ares, though, will just continue to chunk him down, and it's 1-on-1. Successful game for Ares.
And Ares is certainly the feel-good story of this Ever lineup. Was alluded to by Yamato. 1-14 was his record on IM. In fact, he opened up the Kesper Cup playing Kindred, and one of the first Kindreds we saw in competitive. He looked pretty awful, if I'm going to be honest, Uber. He certainly was off the boil, but he got better and better over the tournament. His shot calling really shone through in that victory over SKT. And now he's making early aggression from Mundo work, whereas we've seen from the likes of Rush, much more of a passive early game from this Dr. Mundo that we know can scale up so immensely strong in the late game.
You can see he wasn't willing to leave that lane without that kill, burning his flash, but landing that second crucial Cleaver. Still, these lanes are proceeding in as about a normal fashion as possible, I guess, in a game like this. See as well that we will have Ares returning to the jungle, but Jankos is a little bit forward as well. But here, of course, in this top bottom lane, as we'll call it, it's back and forth, but Forgiven's better to eke himself a small lead.
Top bottom lane, come on, mate. This is the Australian man. Bottom lane's on the top.
We're upside down.
We've got it all upside down. That's a shout out to us because they have no idea we're casting this game, but we can take it anyway.
Oh dear. People do ask me how I deal with all the blood rushing to my head when I go home.
And Athena, he's thrown us a curveball. We haven't seen any. I mean, we talked about League of Legends Mythbusters. Everybody's got a pocket pick that they think's strong in the preseason. I know for me it was the Scion. I was like, all right, Scion's got it. No one can kill him. Varus is not one that I've heard brought up in conversation just because his itemization, particularly in the mid lane, it was all about very quickly reaching your power spike. It was Mana Moon into Brutalizer into Last Whisper. It was 3 items and then, man, your poke hits for so much. But Last Whisper is mostly gone, is crazy, posturing towards mid. Remember, Ryu just used his cleanse, so we could see a turret dive coming in shortly.
Aggressive positioning as well, especially with Ares off to the other side. The Jankos is on the scene relatively quickly there. Maybe not aware of Crazy's presence, but he'll still be taking away that camp. And this is some roaming happening from Crazy. He's going to return back to lane now as well. A bit of attention being put towards Ryu, you can see in the early stages. There's recalls in the top lane as well. Forgiven and Vander, just going to back off.
Yeah, remain to be convinced about the Varus itemization. Maybe we'll see something different. Just, you know, think of the 80 items added to the game, and certainly not Essence Reaver, just because you're not really going to be building critical strike or attack speed necessarily specifically on mid Varus. Maybe we'll see something different, but that's certainly not been the way usually. With the tier, he's already committed to spending a lot of early gold on mana, so not needing to rush for the Essence Reaver. So is this just going to be a weaker overall item build because of the patch change for the Varus?
And of course, picking up that tier does delay that power spike if you're looking forward to it. You're not getting any of those hard-hitting stats that are really going to give you that extra kill potential. So, still question marks over this pick, Puffer. We have sort of been talking about it here, and Athena actually finding himself now slipping a little bit further and further behind in that mid lane, but maybe a blue buff to help him with that farm.
I mean, the one thing you can say, both these champions, immense line wave clear, whether it's the E coming through from Varus or the Q coming through, sorry, the E coming through from Ryu on the Victor or the Q coming through from Varus. Instant wave clear or near to that from a long range. Varus is trying something different. He started off soloing this dragon, gonna get a little bit of help from Key. We have seen next to no prioritization on dragon just because you don't want to swap anything for it, but only the support's time being swapped for it, and fairly free dragons, so you'll take it, even at 9 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, prioritization hasn't been big for that one. You can see Crazy just having to be a little bit careful there in that top lane as he is dealing with that 1v2. Interesting to see. We actually have had our Evers, AD carrying support, move towards the bottom side here as well. And Odoamne scratching his head a little bit about this one. He's going to throw an equalizer down, probably just a wave clear, but he's caught by the Shadow Dash. Ares gets the cleaver in as well, and Odoamne, he's dead to rights. 3 Ever players surround him and take him out. And look at this, Stand United towards the top lane as well. Crazy, what's going to happen here? Key going forward, Jankos gets frozen, tombed, but there, Key pushing forward, Forgiven's there. Vander, you see Key just at the front, but the rest of his team was not there with him. And it's just going to be the 1 kill going over to Ever.
And that was the one thing we didn't mention about that Kesper Cup run. This team runs double teleport like few I have seen. The coordination they have between members is spot on, and the Shen ult into instant teleport bought them basically a free objective. They got the kill. Now in the bottom lane, they're going to at worst trade turrets. There's so much wave clear coming through from Crazy that this turret's going to be delayed, if anything. Very nice global movement coming through from Ever.
So H2K can't capitalize on 3 members of Ever being in the bottom lane when Stand United is available. Of course, if push comes to shove, Key could make a presence in that top lane now. Back to mid again, and you know, still that Varus has to play it slow. He has to deal with falling behind. Ryu is going to be amassing himself some farm, and now thought about going looking for something up there, but it will be Key heading back home.
I mean, the thing that was posed for Athena was that he understood he was going to be largely isolated in the mid lane in a 1v1 against Victor, so he needed comparable wave clear. You might be thinking, all right, why not just go for the Caston for the kill pressure? But you look down this lineup, the wave clear, it's decent from the Sandra, but otherwise it's fairly absent, so he wanted to just go for the wave clear. He understood that if anything went wrong, he might fall slightly behind, but he's not taking a turret pressure. Usually Victor will clear a wave, then either roam or get auto attacks onto the turrets freely. In this situation, turret's at full health, so he's doing his job despite the fact that it doesn't look like he's covering himself in any glory so far in the mid lane.
Yeah, I mean, and conversely, Papa, it looks like Ryu hasn't really been able to stray too far from that mid lane, not even too far forward even. Going for those Raptors there, and return back towards that mid lane and continue doing his thing. And it's Jankos now on site. There's a pink ward in the bush, so for the most part, when you thought about it, you thought about going from that Raptor pit. We can see pings there coming from Ever. They did see him there. And still Right now, he is undetected in that bush. Aries, already alerted to his presence, is going to make his way down towards straight in. Cleaver misses at a non-moving target, but we won't hold that against him. He did spot out Jankos, though, and we'll have to back up.
Multiple members around mid lane. Remember, the Tremor Sense there as well. Might see the flash.
Fair enough, maybe, for him thinking he, with all the H2K people in that middle lane, he does get the flash away. Aries making his way down as well, and Odo and Forgiven actually just going to be linking up here in the bottom lane, and the culling to force Crazy right on back glacial path to ensure the safe escape.
And the structure game continues. This has been the H2K trademark. They're going to keep pushing in aggressively. Crazy still has ultimate.
Very aggressive stuff here. The Pulverize coming out from Vander. The tower beating down on them, and that's a frozen tomb for Crazy. He's going to keep himself alive and flash under that turret. Perfect stuff from him, avoiding that dive. And a fair bit of damage going towards Vander in the process. Forgiven does get his turret.
Insane that he didn't die there. Aerospace checks Ryu.
Yeah, Ryu going to have to deal with him. Does lock him up in that gravity field as well and gives him all the time he needs to back off. We see Void Rush as well from Jankos there, just in case he was needed. And in the meantime, Loken beating away at this top outer turret in the mid. A fight going to go down here. Athena is caught as well. A headbutt back towards the tower. Athena getting hit by those shots. There's too much damage for him to deal with. He's just a Varus. And now Key going to get knocked up by Jankos. He's pushing forward. The Umbarrow has been able to yield a bit of CC, but Key just limps away.
And it's one of the reasons why we saw Varus drop out of the meta, as this champion is so susceptible to getting flashed on by the likes of the Alistar. Really nice engage from Vander. We saw Taunt Flash earlier picking up kill for Key. Vander following in the footsteps of Key. Really nice pick. The wave clears down, but the health on the turret is still high enough that they don't lose that structure just yet.
And you know that's what H2K are wanting to go for here. So far, it's been tit for tat in terms of those towers. 2 apiece here, and a negligible gold difference, of course, only ever just sneaking that dragon out a little bit earlier on. So maybe starting to hit that critical mass. 13 minutes is what we talked about, is when that mid-game started to come around the corner now, and these two teams starting to display a proclivity for wanting to find each other, create picks, and actually start to push down these towers.
Only a small gold lead, but you can tell there's a big mismatch in terms of gold between Ryu and Athena. 30 CS and 2 kills. Looking at the values here, over 1,000 gold, more than the gold lead in the pocket of Ryu. Of course, if Athena just has to sit back and wave clear, it's not as big a factor, but if team fights come through, this victor's certainly a lot bigger.
Banner misses the headbutt there, does get the Pulverize after being Shadow Dashed, and it is going to force ESC back. It's a culling for Forgiven, and there's the Umbarrow, but Loken, nice fate's call there as well, will get Key out of danger.
Backup wave clear available if they have Lissandra rotate to mid. So no picks coming through yet for H2K. With this serrated blade, it looks like the 180 item that they skipped out discussing, the Ghost Blade, still going to be very strong. This was always a Varus item. It's going to come earlier because of the item changes. The pushing continues, but with the backup wave clear, things should be okay for Ever in the mid lane.
You can see that Ever are dealing fairly well with the waves pushing in towards them. Jankos going fairly deep there as well, just for some vision, if I'm not mistaken. Pops a ward down, but Aries will be able to spot that out and clear it out. Very active, Jankos has been, of course, trying to use the ability to come from those different angles, but to see if he can remain relevant, of course, as that Mundo is going to get out of control as the game goes later.
Yeah, the S word, in this case, scaling is the big question mark. Rek'Sai, so much early pressure, used, of course, for the level 3 game. They got this snowball for EU, but they need to turn that snowball into permanent gold, whether that's outer turrets, inner turrets, breaking the base. Eventually this Mundo will snowball out of control, and it's on the Rek'Sai. The onus is completely on Rek'Sai to take control of the game pre-25, 30 minutes, pre-2 health items and level 11 for Ares. Otherwise, Mundo, we've already seen plenty of previews of what this late game could look like forever.
That's right, becoming that indomitable force later on in the piece, and H2K looking to maybe cut things to the quick before that even becomes an eventuality, but Ares again, just a bit of cheeky cleavering towards Jankos and a Shadow Dash over by Key, looking for that pink ward as well, and you can see ESC respecting and prioritizing this vision, especially around this dragon area. Maybe even thinking of going for another one here as well. More of an inclination for Dragon than we've really seen yet this weekend.
Ever have some insane options when Crazy's teleports out. Remember, they have double teleport versus single, so 1-3-1 is a consideration. Lissandra's one of the strongest champions to get a home guard teleport flank on, because of course you have point-and-click suppression CC, or I guess just stun CC coming through from the ultimate. Shen can also ult on top of the Lissandra for more of a CC initiation. Okay, it's only once every 5 minutes, but Ever's just concerned about keeping things even and then going to 1-3-1 consistently. And this was a strategy that brought them so much dividends in the Casper Cup.
It'll be that second dragon now being taken away by ESC. They were visible to H2K there as well, but Europeans in no position to really contest that one. But now, of course, in response, they move towards the middle. That outer turret still needs to be taken down. Ares might be a little bit caught here as well, but he's going to be able to pop that ultimate and get away. Health coming back towards him as the Chaos Storm does go down. There's Vander. He's getting the brawl as well. Headbutting Loken out of the way. And Athena now coming forward with that piercing arrow. H2K maybe realizing they're biting off more than they can chew.
H2K, they're sticking to the script that they wrote yesterday. They are not interested in fighting for first or second dragons. They will take a turret over dragon to the extent that they swapped Forgiven to top lane when dragon was up just to get turret pressure. So very big credit to Ever for navigating that situation, not giving up a pick and not losing their outer turret. They got the dragon for free, but that's the reality of patch 523, is that you only ever take free dragons, because structure for dragon, given how short the games are on average, always seems to be advantage to structure taker. So it would have been advantage H2K, if not for the emergency posturing from Ever.
Of course, weighing up the risk-reward profile between getting caught in that small area and actually coming away with the dragon. So ESC do get their second here as well. It's been a while since we've actually seen a turret taken down. These two teams keeping in step with one another across the map. Both of them trying to forge for some bit of deeper vision here. And you can see some of those wards now timing out a little bit. There's a lot, of course, those red wards on that river.
Surprising to see Ares is forced to go for team itemization. Aegis has been hit multiple times. Now it's less and less effective, both at this stage and completed for the wearer especially. No Spirit Visage means that Mundo's timer for being quite that Dr. Mundo we've seen in other games is going to continue to be delayed. Of course, it's against double AP, so it's very understandable, but still, Mundo's online timing, now we're talking more about 28, 30 minutes rather than necessarily Spirit Visage into Giant Spell where Mundo's already crazy.
If the pace of this game is anything to go by with only 4 kills after 18 minutes, we may just get there. So gold leads all very similar as well. So teleporting towards the mid lane here as well, seeing that one being used by Athena. Might be a fight happening. Crazy goes forward. Ring of Frost towards Ryu, but there comes the Chaos Storm in response. A quick frozen clear to keep Crazy alive, and Key found himself a little bit deeper than he would have liked. It's a Carling coming across that fight, but Ares, he's soaking up all that damage and he's quite happy to dust his shoulders off. Crazy avoids the damage coming from that equalizer here, but Ever having to back up a lot. H2K looking confident coming forward. Now going to get that mid out of turret.
You can see that Athena has to be so defensive in his position whenever Vander walks up. Vander's falling low, but still has ultimate. Will we see a fight here? H2K got what they wanted. Smart of them just to back away.
Ever might now make them pay for this one. Gravity field being used, and it will at least be able to stun up Ares, who is being an absolute threat with those cleavers constantly coming in, forcing that ultimate out of Vander just in case. And it might be a responsive tower take here forever. They managed to give enough ground without getting too low or losing really too many people, or anyone for that matter. And all have one back in response.
Despite some small positioning mistakes, don't force Crazy's teleport out, don't force anything else, end up with an overall trade and no other advantage. So Ever will take that. And just the reality of having double teleport and a Dr. Mundo, the longer this game goes even, the more likely that Ever will scale into an advantage that is just dictated both by the global summoners and the Dr. Mundo jungle.
Set your watches, ladies and gentlemen, or clocks if you don't wear. And we're one of those, as we are now almost up towards 20 minutes in this game, and it has been tit for tat with those turrets, and the gold lead hasn't shown any sign of really increasing. We did highlight, of course, a goal difference between Rio and Athena, and that probably hasn't, sort of been rectified if you're ESC at this point. But, of course, overall, Ever looking like they are coming up with the tools, so they do understand how to respond to what H2K are doing. Where does the deadlock really break here, Puffer? Is it, a team extending too far for that tower, or, I feel like we're building up to something here as well, but it's very much dipping toes in the water at this stage.
What can H2K force? They're already behind 2 dragons. The reality of them taking the next 5 and winning from that, not really there. So that's, again, another reason why Ever can just sit back and wave clear from range. Baron just spawning is an objective that Ever would have to fight for, but Ever's slowly creeping towards the point where they can do that. So the question is, how does H2K push their advantage? It's usually going to be, if we're following previous load, it's going to be Lucian looking for turrets. Of course, that was usually Forgiven on Tristana, but he's on Lucian this game. They need to start pressuring things, because if Ever's just getting uncontested blue buffs, clearing waves, it's just buying time for the inevitable.
Definitely, ostensibly, doesn't seem like Ever are being put under too much pressure here. And, there's Dragon. The Dragon counter there. 2, of course, right now for ESC. That's the Sleeping Lion. If they can get closer towards
maybe he was a Sleeping Lion on the previous patches. He's really in a coma on this patch. The Dragon, do not worry about that number. Probably not going to go low. We see a flash.
Tanko's going to be able to burrow away from that one, but Ares keeping in step with him, and Crazy's already gone so darn deep. It was a Ring of Frost, and there's a Frozen 2 towards Jankos. They've got the pick. ESC want to follow up on this one. Loken went quite low there to Ryu, doing damage to him on the side, and then trade the 1v1. Key went down. Crazy backing away there as well. Ares with the front. I don't really know if ever we're going to find too much more here. The 1-for-1 for now. And these teams now just skirmishing a little bit back and forth in mid. That's the culling coming out. Forgiven wants to spread some damage. Oh, look at that one. H2K is caught by the Ring of Frost, and Athena dispatches him summarily.
Big mistake for HK to keep fighting. Remember, this is a Rumble top lane. Their only tank died first. That's Jankos. Vander's ultimate was down. No front line against all the poke and the double AD damage coming through from the Varus and Callista. That is not the time to fight. Jankos has to be so smart with how he positions in fights, because he is truly the only front line for H2K once Vander's ultimate is down.
Now ESC can batter on towards his middle inner turret here. Forgiven, just trying to keep them at arm's length really, but a lot of damage is going to be done here for ESC, and I'll be very happy with that one. And as you said, perhaps the Dragon not really a consideration here, but maybe H2K are going to die by the same sword that they live. This aggression that they're bringing has now been turned on them for the second time in a row.
Looking for third Dragon at 22 minutes. That would be by far the fastest 3-Dragon stack. Remember, we've seen games where 90 minutes is the first Dragon that's taken. Jankos thinking about contesting. Remember, this is against Callista, so realistically not going to be able to pick it up. Third Dragon means, again, we'll only whisper it, still the Coma Dragon, but still it is an outside possibility that a 5th Dragon win condition might exist, even on patch 523.
Seems like Ever are happy to, try and apply pressure in whatever way that they can, aside from just trying to barrel their way in towards H2K side of the map there. Third Dragon for them here again. Maybe not the most notable thing at this stage, but what we're more looking towards is how the behavior of H2K has sort of been a consistent thing here. Coming forward, going for these fights, sort of trying to back away, and then ESC saying, well, all right, I'm going to send a cleaver your way, and then we're going to see what we can sort of carve out of you in response. And, I mean, bit by bit, it doesn't seem like much. This gold difference is still essentially the same. So on paper, doesn't look like a big lead, but almost it's a qualitative thing that we're seeing here.
I mean, the thing that HK need to do is to find a way to flank specifically Athena. One of the reasons they chose Varus last pick is you look down HK's lineup, there's no Malphite, there's no true hard engage. Their top lane is Rumble, who can control space with his ultimate and do damage, but again, isn't going to be causing any sort of initiation unless they can get some flank wards. If Athena can just freely queue from distance, remember, this is a patch where outer turrets are much weaker. In general, turrets are effectively paper thin, so double AD against turrets, they chunk one person out, take a turret, rinse and repeat. Ever catches Jankos.
Yeah, he goes Void Rushes straight away, goes into that one. He didn't know what he was going to be going towards, but Logan's going to be there to meet him on the other side of the wall, and Jankos gets picked off there as well, and ESC going to be happy to force the 5v4 here. A little bit of damage from Ryu, warning shots perhaps towards Ares, and ESC now just going to set up here as well, and towards his mid-side.
Just a mistake from Jankos, didn't have the defensive vision, just didn't anticipate that anyone else was around. Logan taking a lot of damage from the culling, but Jankos cannot afford to use his ult quite that aggressively.
Again, that front liner for H2K is down, and now Crazy as well, feeling comfortable enough just to build away at this top turret as well. While all this is happening, of course, while everyone starts to just back away, as I assume Crazy will do, will he be caught? I doubt it. Let's talk about Forgiven, Papa, as well, because he started to carve out a decent amount of farm. I mean, the CS lead is big for him, obviously down 2 kills, but what are your thoughts on how his role is going to be sort of, changing, or maybe how it's going to show itself in the next 10 or so minutes?
I mean, with the new itemization, you can't pigeonhole Lucian into any sort of early or mid-game AD carry. This is a champion that scales fantastically throughout the game, good at taking out turrets, very good in skirmishes and good in team fights. So he's gone largely uninterrupted, but this isn't ideal for a champion that does function somewhat as a lane bully, to have not picked up any kill consideration. Even though he's 60 CS ahead, I imagine the gold between the two AD carries is pretty comparable.
Similar indeed. So Forgiven definitely be looking to try and draw some blood in a meaningful manner in the coming minutes. It's a bit of house cleaning here for ESC as they do start to clear things around this Baron side. So maybe some focus being shifted in terms of where on the map they're wanting to try and dominate. Jankos there as well has to be careful. He's taken away that Gromp here. Kia as well is heading up towards the top of that map. He might have a catch here as well. Jankos yet again in his own jungle being harassed. And H2K's presence off towards the side will at least dissuade further aggression.
And look, 2 teleports are up, so what are we seeing? 1-3-1 is the name of the game. In this patch, mages now do more damage to turrets just because of the changes that Riot put through in 522, so even better at split pushing than before. Don't need the Lich Bane to be able to put out respectable damage to turrets, and Ever playing the percentage game, they've got double teleport. The onus is on H2K to make initiations, and we just already discussed it. They don't really have the best tools to do so, so the pressure game continues. Okay, maybe ever doesn't break a turret, but it buys time, it keeps going, it keeps ticking, and whether it's Dragon win conditions, whether it's more items onto the Mundo, everything is happy reading if you're an Ever fan, if nothing changes in terms of the turret column or the gold lead between these two teams.
See now if H2K can, well, I mean, get themselves, I guess, into a commanding position as well with some characteristic aggression here. But like you said, hard to get those engagements, of course. It's going to be a decent unburrow from Jankos or Vander going in with the horns out in front there as well. And again, ESC making their way around this Raptor pit as well. H2K forced to try and eke what they can out of that little scenario. Just back and forth, and H2K as well does have his teleport up. He's down on the bot side. He's just trying to reduce some of the pressure being applied earlier on by Crazy.
It's one of those problems that can't really be rectified by itemization. Maybe a Rylai's coming through for a U on the Victor will give them a little bit of pick potential, 35. A nice slow coming through, particularly from the Q as it's a single target ability, but it's not really a problem you can rectify easily. And the double teleport, this is just the thing. It's almost like it's the prisoner's dilemma every time you're in champ select and you see control mids when you have to say, okay, but if I don't take teleport and he takes teleport, then we're kind of screwed when it comes to the 1-3-1 situation. The double teleport, even though it's a teleport Varus, and you're certainly not taking that teleport for any sort of engage, don't really want to be flanking with Varus, even though he has an initiation ultimate, much better used for disengage. The double teleport game propelled Ever past teams like SKT is on full display this game.
So you can see that the implied mobility from Ever, it does affect H2K's decision making. Here you can see that they're a little bit nervously just jockeying back and forth in the mid and trying to keep in step or keep tabs on these Ever players so they know at least if something fishy is afoot. But right now it seems pretty straightforward. Straight down the mid, Loken there. Gonna be fate to call. Ryu's gonna have to flash away from that one as well. But he got caught by the Ring of Frost to the side. Brilliant stuff. Crazy came in for the pincer maneuver. Vander popping his ult very, very early on there as well. Crazy forced to flash away. And Stand United will keep him alive for now as well. But this fight may well swing down in towards the mid or have that mid in a turret as well. And do Ever want to go for more? Ares seems to indicate yes, but it's a missed cleaver. And ESC now, just look at that, the pushing up that battle line, that no man's land now is moving closer and closer to H2K's base. And ESC, oh, we got Mundo, and they're all going where they please.
It's going to be rinse and repeat. They have so much control over the map. They're actually teleporting onto a minion to keep it alive. They're going to get a lot of turret damage. They might even break the base here.
Oh, they're belt through here as well. That inhibitor turret does fall. And at what point do H2K have to respond to this? It's ESC getting aggressive. They're pushing them back right now. H2K already down to about half health. And then inhibitor is down. Ever just pushing straight through as well. It was just a one pick or so that allowed them to push in, and look how much damage they've managed to inflict to H2K's base.
Will they kite back to the Dragon? Will they just go back, pick up some purchases and go split push other lanes? They still have one teleport available. The Dragon started. Everything is in the pocket of Ever. They've broken the base and taken an inhibitor. They've got 4 Dragons in just a second. It's all academic in that regard. Ever, this team has not missed a beat. The first team to qualify for IEM Cologne has clearly put that practice time to good use because they are playing textbook League of Legends in a tournament that hasn't really shown any textbook. You couldn't write a textbook given how different the first 3 series of this tournament has been. And suddenly we're seeing just beautiful League of Legends played by Ever.
And after losing the LCK promotions, Ever actually, that was when they decided they're going to move in together. They were going to spend time playing in the holiday period that most teams would have had after that time. They practiced for the entirety of it. Now you can maybe see some of that's starting to manifest here. H2K or H2 Days, I think is what they were sort of branded as after yesterday. They looked really, really strong. And even here there is obviously, I mean, Gold League not too much out of their control. But I mean, we talked about it. I mean, and even Yamato pulled it up on the desk as well. Strong early game or decent early game, at least comparable, but then those bad decisions might just start to creep in as the game goes longer.
But has it been bad decisions? I wouldn't really say so. I mean, wonderful early game from Jankos, got them ahead as they expected. It's just they haven't really been able to push in the early to mid game. And how many times have we said that? Every time we see a Mundo against the likes of Nidalee, for example, Nidalee team or the early game Power Spike team gets ahead, but only to a point. And then we eventually reach this late game to mid to late game reality where they're outscaled. And whether it's the double teleport or the Mundo, H2K played a very polished champion select. They were just beaten by a team that, had 3 flexes in the first 4 picks and then could just pick Varus in a situation where there's just no engage to get on top of him. Speaking of engage,
he's been called in and he's going to knock up Vander. And again, Crazy always coming in from the periphery. Manages to add some CC in there. But there goes Vander. He's going to be able to get the headbutt forward there. Keys in the middle of the mix there. Vander's going to drop down. It's a single kill for Loken there as well. H2K trying to push in and get rid of that that 80 carry, but a bit of heal coming out, and a double kill coming out for Loken now as well. Somehow holding on to his dear life, and Forgiven is forced to flash the cleaver away and keep his distance. 3 for 0 there, Ever. Now they're baring their teeth. Now they're getting aggressive, and now they're pushing forward.
They might even be looking for the finish. Poetry in motion was that team fight from Ever. How did Loken have the fast feet to stay alive? Eris, nope, not taking any damage from turrets. I think late game Mundo's been achieved. And maybe they won't finish the game quite now, but with the death timers, might be time.
Look at the pressure they're putting on towards these Nexus turrets. It looks like they don't want to be stopped here, and Jankos again got to get slowed up. It was a taunt towards Forgiven. Oh, everybody's falling. It's a bloodbath and Ever. They put their name all over this one. They will take down the Nexus, and game 1 goes to our Koreans. A strong showing in their first game of IEM Cologne.
I think myself and a lot of analysts were just wondering, is this the Ever we saw at the Kesper Cup? Was it a flash in the pan? Okay, it's only one game, but this one game was just academic. It was well brought down. They once again seemed to understand patch 523 just with the beauty in their draft. The team fighting was on point. This team has not missed a beat since the Kesper Cup.
And you weren't pointing fingers at a particular mistake made by H2K.
Oh.
You were alluding to something on a more fundamental level. Was it out of that champion select, or where did that occur for them?
I mean, the champion select was just beautiful. The 3 flexes, we've wondered out loud, why are we not seeing flexes? You know, for example, the last series where we saw Fiora locked in first, a champion that only really has one role. And this time, we had the likes of Lissandra, we had Mundo, we had Shen. They had so many different flexes. And what does that force? Even though you've kept your top lane and your mid lane for the last side of picks on blue, so that, of course, gives you, theoretically, the chance to counterpick. They didn't get to counterpick anything. They had to pick a safe top lane in Rumble, a safe wave clear mid lane in Victor, and they managed to get the last pick to counter that as well. So Ever got everything they wanted. They played with much aplomb and just very strategic, smart League of Legends. And they take the victory despite H2K playing pretty good themselves.
No doubt about it there as well. So H2K, tough for them and probably, I guess, to rally together for this next game as well. Maybe the fix will come far early on in the process. But let's pass it over towards our experts and put this one under the microscope.
Thank you very much, Uber. You're looking sharp today. You almost look like you're running for office. But right now, the spotlight is on Ever. They take that first win, and they're looking good so far.
Thing that I really want to touch on forever, you know, I talked about how they have such great shot calling, especially late game, despite the fact that they're technically a challenger team or, you know, a semi-professional team, and it's their objective identification. What I mean by that is they are so good at identifying exactly where they need to be on the map in terms of setting up and taking something. I think the meta actually really favors them right now, simply because structures are so important. You know, Ever don't need to rely on their team fighting. It looked good on the back half of that game, but they don't have to force themselves into dragons. They don't mean as much. Just figure out which tower to take down and snowball the gold. It's almost like the perfect streamlined meta for them.
I feel like if you take a look at this game as a whole, it's like, I think it was a high quality game. It's supposed to be very one-sided after that first initial mistake. That is what it's supposed to be. It was very, very clean cut. It was the first initial mistake, and I think the first initial mistake was in the draft, because oh my goodness, Ever's draft, I have zero complaints.
Yeah.
They drafted wonderfully, and the big question I have is, are they going to survive in the lane phase against these big players? Once again, they have faced big players almost only in the past, so why not? They survived the lane phase, and they played to their win condition, and it was a clean-cut game.
Yeah,
I think I'm most impressed just by the way they drafted. It's like just pulling out the pocket, like Varus, and then solving all the problems in their team comp. Varus, of course, a really good matchup into the Victor, and then solving. Yeah, I'm pretty impressed by that, the way they draft, and I think that a lot of teams, that if they want to learn how to do it properly, they should take a really close look at whatever does.
Yeah, I think that's really staying in all of our mindsets. And everyone, you know, I saw it on social media too. People who are watching the community, I'm seeing these clips about, okay, so far we weren't quite sure how drafts were supposed to work out, but Ever, I think all of us can agree that that is definitely a good draft. Like, you can't really complain about that. Now the big question is, does that continue? Because on the side of H2K, I think another big thing we pointed out was that Lucian did go over to Forgiven, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't enough. You can't just make that happen just because he gets Lucian against a team like that.
H2K are about to lose a lot of power in the draft simply because they're about to be on red side, though. So all of these targeted bans are going to be removed from them, and they're going to have to fall back to, you know, banning Lulu. So the fact that it was so heavily punished, like Ever got such a great draft from red side, and yes, there's so many power picks, so it makes, you know, that double rotation much stronger because there's more OP champions left up, but I think it's going to be even harder for H2K in terms of their draft if they don't really pick it up here.
I think the big question mark of what H2K did was the first pick, Alistar. I think time and time again, Mundo is just showing that he is a powerful MFer, you know?
Yeah.
I tried,
Powerful
I tried to
misfortune, for
remove
sure.
the word from my head, but it's just stuck in there. But Mundo is super, super powerful. I felt like he should have been the first rotation. I remember Jankos tweeted to you that he's going to prove to you that Mundo is overrated, but
Maybe I should just go and retweet it right now, you know.
Yeah, hey, bring the pass back up,
Aggressively,
man. Make it haunt him a little bit, but it's not over. So far, this weekend, the first team to win a set has gone down in the overall match. We'll see if H2K can bring it back up, kind of fix their mistakes that they had, especially in the picks and bans, as we wait for Game 2 right after this.
Delivery for Hotshot?